This is the smoking section with Steve Helfer, and as you can see, my co-host, sometime co-host and sub-host, I guess you might say.
Sub-host. So
Right.
I'm lesser than you.
Well, you
Is that what that
substitute
implies?
when I'm not here. You take the more difficult guests and do the interviews, whereas I just come on and do my usual harangue.
No gifts. No guests are difficult. They're only fun.
Okay. We should be good. It would be good to actually try to get some difficult guests.
It would actually. It would actually be interesting to have a real debate with someone who didn't necessarily agree with us. I often think because we don't often get a chance. You know, you and I, we might encounter prejudice during our day-to-day lives against smokers, but it's not often that we get to actually debate with someone, especially.
Well, I did invite that fellow. I can't remember his name from the organization at Northeastern University, who lives in Cambridge and who is basically a full-time anti-smoking activist, a paid anti-smoking activist. I invited him on. But he didn't respond. But I probably should have sent him another email because I see him from time to time.
Yeah. Try again.
And he's pretty pleasant to me. It's not like when we see each other we make faces at each other. But
Maybe appearing on community television has a certain, I don't want to say stigma, but
no,
maybe it's intimidating.
Intimidating.
How do we say that? I'm being generous.
I think I don't know. I don't know.
But I do think that community television has a certain. It doesn't carry the weight perhaps that it used to. I think people used to be more interested in appearing on community television, but now I'm afraid that community television is becoming more and more irrelevant. Although actually, I don't think that's really true because of the internet. Oh, it looks like we're getting a phone call already.
That's nice.
Or did they hang up? Oh no, there we go. Hi, you're on the smoking section.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, how are you?
Good. But
It's been a while.
Is this Jim?
Tell me again how cigarettes aren't harmful.
Well, Emily is on today, and
Is this Jim? Jim, I've heard you on many shows. I'm a big fan. Okay.
I don't know if he hung up or we can. Emily? How would how would you say that cigarettes aren't harmful?
How would I say that they're not harmful to health?
If you were going to say that, yes.
Well, I think it's, for one thing, it's a little unfair to put it that way, I think, because it's making us argue against a supposition that smoking is harmful. I don't necessarily believe that smoking is any more harmful than any number of other behaviors, but I think there's all kinds of factors that play into it. How much you smoke, perhaps other factors of your lifestyle. I just think it's a little unfair to pick on smoking as the most harmful thing that you can possibly do for your health. Also, I think that all people are different, and different things can be healthy for different people.
Well, I have a kind of a pat answer that I've kind of come up with, and first of all, I'll say that I've smoked all my life, and I've had certain mental issues that I think have been eased a lot by smoking. So, and I've always found smoking, even if I was very depressed or very bored or very lonely, I've always found smoking to be helpful. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's some kind of cure-all, but I think it helped me deal with those, and those are pretty common.
Well, I think that health has become this abstract notion that people have that you have to live a certain way in order to be healthy. Whereas I think health can mean a lot of different things to different people. If you have particular mental issues or even particular physical issues, then one thing can be healthier for you than another. There's no one set prescription for health, in my opinion. I'm also a big believer just in moderation in all things, and not everyone has to agree with me on that, but I think that a lot of things are perfectly healthful unless they're taken to extremes.
Right, certainly quantity matters, but so that for me, I don't know where I would be if I had not found tobacco. Now, would I be better? I guess you might possibly say that, but could I not be a lot worse? Might I not have become much more dependent on prescription medications?
True, yeah.
Maybe, for example, I had to stop drinking because I was drinking way too much. Now, if I hadn't had cigarettes to fall back on, maybe I wouldn't have been able to give up drinking, and I would have really gotten in bad trouble, cirrhosis of the liver, or gotten into a terrible accident.
Could be. Yeah, who knows?
Because
It's hard to
I was
say.
doing some pretty dangerous things when I was drinking. I mean, not often, but I was putting myself in circumstances. So I was able to give up drinking partially, I think, because I had cigarettes to fall back on. And so I don't know. I am certainly not convinced. I think that I am better than I would have been had I never smoked.
Yep.
And
I just don't understand why people get so upset about smoking. It almost seems like it offends them morally. I think like Jim sounded a little testy when.
well,
he
I don't know
said-
if Jim. I don't think Jim gets morally offended by smoking, but I think what happens with Jim is that he has heard for so long from such, eminent authorities as the Surgeon General, etc., that when he sees us come up and say, "Well, smoking isn't bad for you," he says, "Well, who are you? I mean, you don't have a medical degree, etc."
Yeah, well, I think also it's just human nature that you don't like to hear something that completely contradicts things that you've believed for a long time to be true. I mean, none of us really likes that.
No,
you know.
no.
I have to
that's-
admit, I
that's for
myself
sure.
do not like it.
I don't like it either,
So-
one bit.
Not to pick on you, Jim, if you're listening.
I think Jim is listening. And okay, so I think smoking has helped me deal with those things in my life which I have found very difficult for a long, long time. So I am not convinced that I would be better if I hadn't smoked. In fact, I am persuaded, but I don't have definite facts here, that if I had never smoked, I would not be in as good a condition as I am now, mentally or physically. Not that I'm perfect in either of those ways. And then the next thing, so that's the first thing I say to this argument. And then the second thing I
But
say,
I don't think he even put forward an argument. That's the thing. What did he say? He said, "How are you going to say that smoking is not unhealthy?" Is that what he said?
I think so.
I mean, he's not really even putting forth an argument, so I don't see why we're arguing against it.
Well, because we're used to arguing in it. And okay, and then the next thing I'll say, and Emily, you've heard me say this ad nauseum, but I think it's very important to consider, is that I have known people who have never smoked in their lives and gotten sick, and some of them sadly have died at a young age. I know other people who have smoked for long periods of time and then given up smoking, and not only did their health not improve, but it got worse. And I've known other people who smoked all their lives and lived into their 80s and 90s.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So, I mean, that adds an element of, this idea that like there are two lists, and there are good for you things and there are bad for you things, and the
Right,
more
right.
good for you things you do, the longer and happier and healthier you live, and the more bad for you things you do, the opposite. I don't think it works. I don't think it works that way.
I don't think so either.
I mean, everyone's life is a constellation of choices and habits, and but I think you're right. I mean, I think if you do something in extreme excess, although a lot of people who've smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day, which is extreme
Well,
excess.
then the question is what is excess? I mean, and I couldn't even say what excessive smoking is.
Well, I mean,
don't know.
you know,
It would depend on the individual.
A lot of people smoke very heavily for many, many years.
Right, but
and-
what is heavy smoking?
Well, I would say 4 packs a day is pretty heavy.
Okay. I mean, but that might not. Also, there might be people who that doesn't particularly affect them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. But you can't smoke much more than 4 packs of cigarettes a day.
Well, nowadays I think it's even difficult to smoke that much because you can't smoke indoors. So there's going to be so many situations where you just can't smoke anymore that I
Right.
think it would be very difficult to even smoke 4 packs a day. But anyway, I think we're getting a little off topic.
Well, okay. Well, so there. That's if Jim asked us that, and the benefits of smoking. I think there are many benefits of smoking.
But I would also, I'd invite Jim to call back with a specific question or a specific argument because I don't think that he particularly presented anything specific. So.
I mean, I have a friend now, who has COPD. I mean, I think his lungs are in pretty bad shape. He has smoked cigarettes in his life. He's smoked a lot of marijuana. He's taken a lot of drugs. He has allowed himself to gain a lot of weight. He has never exercised in any kind of systematic way. His diet is just unbelievable in a sense. Is this COPD a result of his smoking? Is marijuana smoking? There's so many factors that go into that.
Yeah.
And he's also 65 years old, so he's not a spring chicken. He's lived, a good bunch of years.
Yeah.
How long do people want to live anyway?
Okay. All right.
And then, so
Let's move on.
Emily, we're going to move on now. We beat that horse. So, you posted a interesting story. But before we go there, I'm just, have you noticed any of these studies about football and concussions?
I have actually. I was just reading today about, I think, a review of Tom Brady's autobiography.
Oh, really?
And they were
A review?
they were criticizing the fact that he didn't mention this condition of concussions that football players sustain at
Really?
all in his book. They said, I don't know if that's true. So they were it seemed like they were criticizing him for trying to downplay that aspect of being
really?
of being a professional football
Yes.
player. So but I was, when I was reading this, I was skeptical just because it seemed to go along with what I dislike about our very risk averse society right now.
Yeah.
They were making this big deal about the fact that he didn't mention this in his autobiography.
Really?
Which I feel like, what duty does he have to
Right.
mention this in his own autobiography?
Who was writing this review and where
I
was it?
can't remember where it was. I was on some website.
Yes? Was it a good, well-written review?
It was. I mean, it was. It wasn't. It wasn't chicken
But
scratch.
and the thing is, it's interesting. What's that?
It wasn't chicken scratch.
Well, right now, what's getting a lot of attention is a study that was done in BU that is talking about early. I don't know all that much about the study, but they're talking about early young boys playing football, and then later, linking it
Yeah.
to increased depression, increased
Right.
a few other things.
Right. I think what they were saying was that even if you don't become a professional football player, that even if you only play it when you're young in school, maybe in elementary school, high school, that it can still have adverse effects.
So you've heard about this study then, this
I
particular
believe
study?
I have.
It was just published
I
in the
can't say
most...
with absolute certainty.
Right, but I've been hearing it referred to a lot, and it just seems to me that, there is this momentum building up where a lot of people who are in the field of epidemiology are, going after to study football and come up with, it seems like there's there's an inclination to come up with these studies that are showing how dangerous football is, and they're getting a lot of publicity.
Right, and it makes you wonder. I mean, what's the goal of this? Because I feel like if people learn whatever dangers there might be to playing football and decide that they don't want to play football, that's fine. But it makes you wonder if they, and I say they between quotation marks, whoever they is, are they gearing up to increase regulation around football? I'm just not really sure what this is leading up to.
Well, the thing that is, there was an interesting article, when I don't want to get too sidetracked into this, but I'll try to send you this article. So there's an article in the these studies are coming out and people are going, they're getting a lot of attention. And I think there was a predisposition on the part of these researchers to come up with studies that are going to be damning of football.
Yeah, I would agree. It seems that there's just that general mood in our society right now that anything I think frightening about health seems to be popular.
Well, and also what they're doing with these studies is they're saying, well, he played football, and when he was 35 years old, he got depressed, and there are more people who get depressed who played football. I mean, they're juggling a lot of different phenomena, and it's very similar to smoking. It's like saying, somebody's mother smoked when he was a kid, and when he was 25 years old, he got in trouble with the police, and 20% more people who get in trouble with the police, their mother smoked. I mean, trying to link these things.
Well, that's a feeling. I mean, this is just a feeling that I have, and more than anything, I can't prove it, but it does seem to be similar to smoking in that for some reason people dislike something, say smoking or football, and they've decided, they've decided what they want their conclusion to be. That is that smoking is bad for you, or that football is bad for you. So they go after studies that will prove that hypothesis.
Well, and the people who do these studies know that if they do a study coming up with damning stuff about football, they are going to get published and recognized. And so,
Right.
I really question the science, but I haven't looked very closely at these
I
studies.
question it too, but I don't know enough
But
about it.
you're
Yeah.
linking, linking these phenomena
Right.
that happen,
Right.
and then how do you know and then a lot of
It seems like things like depression are very hard to quantify.
Precisely,
That's what
precisely.
sets off alarm bells for me.
And of course, even the term concussion is hard to, if I hit my head on the door walking out of here, I guess that's a very mild concussion,
Right.
Yeah. And it seems like they're really gearing up,
Yeah, it does. It does. What I was saying earlier about how it almost seems like it's a foregone conclusion and people are just trying to prove it. I don't know if that's true, and I don't even know if you could necessarily say that about smoking. We could argue one way or the other. But it does seem to me, as I said earlier, that I think there's a certain moral outrage about smoking. And I wonder whether there's a similar sort of moral outrage about football in America.
Well, I think, without getting into all of that, but one thing that I think is also important to note is, like people who are critical of the press, I'm not someone who is terribly critical of the press, because I think the press is the press and they have their weaknesses and their strengths. And one of the weaknesses of the press is they want to write stories that people want to read. And
right, and so why do people want to read these stories? I think because there is that certain moral latent
well, I mean, if
outrage.
you come up with a study that doesn't show any kind of damage associated with football, it's a dull study.
That's true.
It's not going to make front page on the Globe. You come up with some, young boys who are playing football are in danger of all kinds of terrible things. That is a story that is exciting.
That's true.
That is a story that if you report on the news, people are going to listen to.
That's true. So I think we're all guilty in some extent to contributing to this phenomena of news about things that are
Well, bad
for
news
the-
sells papers.
Bad news, yeah.
I mean, that's just it.
It's true. Yeah.
People don't want to read nothing happened in Korea today.
I'd like to read a newspaper that has bad news about the nanny state in it. Bad news. The nanny state is trying to control you. Isn't that awful?
I mean, I grew up in a football culture, and I know that in my high school everybody played football. I mean, not me, but they all seem to have done okay, but then they say, well, that's just anecdotal.
Yeah, it's just anecdotal. It's just like when you know everyone you know has smoked for 60 years and have lived to their 90. That's just anecdotal evidence.
But without wading into that, okay, so Emily, this story you posted on Facebook, which is still on our Facebook page, about Philip Morris, donating $1 billion to stop people from smoking. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was a little confused about the article. At first I thought that they had donated money, but it almost sounded in the article as if they had founded this group to create a smoke-free world. I think that was the name of the group, Smoke-Free World something.
Right, yes.
So I'm not clear on whether they just donated this money or whether they've actually founded this group.
Well, Billy does a lot of money, one way or the other, right?
But what I thought was interesting in the article was it kind of seemed to be playing it two ways. In the article, it suggested at first saying, well, people have some misgivings about this because Philip Morris are obviously a tobacco company, and we all know tobacco companies are the most evil entities on the planet. So people were worried that there would be some ulterior motive in setting up this foundation, in that they might be funding research that would further their own goals. But I thought that's ridiculous. If the foundation they're founding, the goal is to have a smoke-free world, how are you going to accuse them of funding research that's going to oppose that goal? So that just seemed to be a contradiction to me. But I really think it was just another opportunity to bash tobacco companies in the article. I'm not sure if it was founded on anything.
Well,
the accusation was founded on anything.
It's interesting because the person who's the head of this foundation is someone who has worked in the World Health Organization and has worked in other areas. So, his bona fides are pretty good. and he's also a champion of electronic cigarettes.
Okay.
So there is kind of Philip
Who
Morris.
is this person?
I don't remember his name, but he's the head of this organization.
Okay.
And so far, Philip Morris is the only contributor to it.
Right. So
That's a lot of money, though,
it
God.
is. It is.
But it's going to be over an extended period of time. Basically, it's our money.
It is. It's also a very frightening proposition to me. The idea of a smoke-free world. I mean, just the words are so obviously so Orwellian.
So
It
totalitarian.
sends chills down my spine to think of a smoke-free world.
God forbid. God forbid.
Indeed.
And that's like a totally antiseptic world,
It
where
is. It is.
people don't think bad thoughts and they don't have bad habits, and
Well.
no
I don't
one
know about
disagrees.
that. Yeah.
No one
I can
disagrees
think
with
of a lot of
this.
bad habits.
Other than smoking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course,
right.
I don't see smoking as a bad habit. So
Right.
Right. There's
Right,
a
I
lot
don't
of
think
habits
so
that
either.
I don't particularly like.
I read the article, and it really seems like Philip Morris wants to kind of move into the electronic device.
Right, and when I finished the article, I was left with the impression that that is the most plausible scenario to me. Not that I'm trying to read anything into Philip Morris's intentions one way or another. I don't particularly care, but I think it's much more likely that they're pursuing an economic
Well, to some degree, yeah.
policy to some degree.
Yeah, I guess so, or
because
maybe entirely.
because promoting electronic cigarettes is obviously going to be to their benefit as well. Because,
If they're making electronic
because
cigarettes.
they're trying to get into that market as well, I believe.
Well, I mean, I think they're saying they are. They're pretty
Right.
big in that market, according to this article.
Right.
But I mean, they're saying that I don't know what exactly they're saying. They're saying electronic cigarettes, by all standard criteria, are much healthier than tobacco cigarettes, and therefore we are paying $1 billion to move in that direction, and we are making them, and we will profit by them. So there's none of those things are. I mean, the thing that
Right. I mean, there's nothing incongruous about it to me. I feel like people are obviously going to try to cast aspersions on Philip Morris's motives, just because, as I said, people love to demonize tobacco companies. But I think that their motives have always been profit driven, because they're a company. That's their bottom line is their concern.
right. Well, it's not their only concern. I don't think the bottom line. I don't think any company's only concern is their bottom line.
Right.
And Philip Morris, as a matter of fact, has way before, for 40 or 50 years, has always done things that, especially under the CEO, he was who I guess is now no longer alive. You know the man I'm talking about? I can't remember his name. But anyway. The CEO of Philip Morris always, for example, they were the first company in the South to promote black people to managerial positions.
Is that right?
Yeah, Philip Morris, the head of Philip Morris, I think his name was Coleman, was always a great philanthropist and used money from Philip Morris to promote arts, to promote this and that for black communities and for other people. So I don't think Philip Morris traditionally has only, I mean, yes, they care about their
Right.
profit.
Yeah.
Primarily, that's, I think, their most important thing. But they've always done things, particularly in the South, funded education for people. I mean, I met someone at Harvard who, said, I wouldn't be here at Harvard if it wasn't, I don't remember if it was Philip Morris or R.J. Reynolds or Lorillard, but, they've always maintained a certain, so that, so I don't know, it was an interesting article. I finally just sent in a letter to the editor of the Cambridge Chronicle regarding last December's Berkshire Street fire, because I got the reports and the official reports of the fire, which has been blamed on careless smoking, but I don't think it's.
So did the report actually say that it was blamed on smoking?
The report says the fire investigators, it's their collective opinion. Well, I use that in quotation marks.
That sounds like legalese for
Well, I mean, it's
something
not,
that don't sue us if we're wrong, basically.
well, and it, one criterion and then of course,
I mean, of course, they're not required to prove that it was caused by smoking, right?
no, they're not required to prove that, although, if insurance companies get involved, one thing is the Middlesex District Attorney's Office was thinking about pressing criminal charges.
Against the construction company.
Probably against the construction workers.
The construction worker who purportedly carelessly
cigarette-
disposed of.
Right, but not for carelessly disposing of a cigarette, I don't think.
What for?
For lying about smoking.
Huh. That sounds even more chilling, doesn't it?
Well, but the only thing is, my guess is the Middlesex District Attorney's Office decided not to bring criminal charges because the evidence is not strong enough to conclude that cigarette did indeed cause the fire.
Ah, very
So
interesting.
therefore his lies aren't that important.
Very interesting.
Listen, that's it, Emily. Thanks for watching tonight.
Thank you. Good night.